Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Transformed You. We are currently in a podcast series on the subject of toxic relationships, how to heal from them, how to work through them. It's a tough subject, but it's a subject that is real to most people's lives. It's something you're going to have to address. It's something you're going to have to work through. And we've been processing each episode kind of one at a time as we've been going through it and just prayerfully taking in some of the feedback and questions people are asking. And this is real roll up your sleeves kind of work area. So if you're wanting easy answers, quick answers, if you want the easy road in life, you want a quick fix, these episodes are probably not for you. But if you're willing to say, you know what, I want to allow the relational struggles that are around me that are presenting situations to bring out things I need to think about, work on, and decisions I need to make, then these episodes I think will be really, really helpful for you. Where I thought we would go today, and we had a discussion on this, and we were kind of going through the ins and outs of this. We get a lot of questions on what do I do? What do I do? Kind of like, that's like the bottom line. When you're in a toxic relationship and you identify the yuck of it, it's like, what do I do? And what we're encouraging is, yes, there's steps they're going to be made. You're going to have to make some decisions. Bottom line, you're going to have to make some decisions. But just making the decision isn't enough. And what I mean by that is you're going to have some work to do, some inner work to do before those decisions, during those decisions, after those decisions. If you really want to experience the growth and maturity that's available. So in this episode, we want to take just a few moments and we want to look at your heart for a bit and look at you for a second. Why is it that you stay in a toxic relationship? Why do you remain in it? Why do you feel stuck in it? Why are you in a neutral place where decisions aren't being made, whatever it might be? And yes, we need wisdom. Yes, we need to make decisions. And so I thought we would just take a few moments to get into what is the why behind why we often stay in toxic relationships. And I'll give the top one and you tell me what you think. Mm-hmm. I believe the number one reason that we stay in a toxic relationship is we feel we truly care for the person and we think the person can change. We see the potential and we hang on to that. And we feel like they're going to change, they can change, and things can get better, and they hook onto that. What do you think?
Right. Well, I talked about this, I think that it was last week, and I would say that in one of the most toxic relationships that I had before you and I got married, the theme was that I had the love that this person needed that would heal them because, right, we're all attracted to people that have issues. And we usually recognize, yeah, they had, horrible parents and they have this issue with women. For the most part, I think most people can kind of see like what the other person's woundedness is. I think we're in a day and age where we can see that. So we think, well, yeah, wow, they've told me they had a bad dad or their mom didn't really say, didn't be whatever those things are. And in the beginning of relationships, because of the euphoria and lust and all that, and you think you're fulfilling each other and all that, you think this illusion comes that you are, it's very like superhero godlike actually, that you alone think that your love is going to heal them. And as Christians, we love that badge. We love to wear it. I am going to love this person and I'm going to be Jesus-like to them, right. And I'm going to give them everything they need to heal in their woundedness and help them come out of their addictions and help them talk. And we think that we have the magic combination to do that, especially when you see like the relationships that I was in, the potential this person has. Like, wow, if they could just heal this, it's so arrogant. Really?
Yeah, interesting.
It's very arrogant.
Let me jump in because there's a bunch of things there. So one, that's tough to admit.
Yeah.
That's the hardcore tough to admit, right? Mm-hmm. Two, it then leads into a second thought that says, if I move on from this relationship, this person's life is not going to be good. They're going to spiral.
Or, well, how I took it is they're going to change because they have it in them. And I'm going to miss out on the amazing person and potential. What if another girl or guy comes along that is that change for them when I could have been that change and I miss out? Like, that is demented. Do you know how many people? Listen, don't fool yourself, okay? Take a deep, hard look.
Right.
Especially those of you in addict relationships. When you're in a relationship with an addict, this is a numero uno. If they could just get free, like they'd be so amazing, and I'm going to miss out on that. Like, what do you think they're going to be? The president of the United States? Like, what is it? Like,
right.
Let me stay under abuse of any kind. Emotional abuse, passivity is abuse, physical, any kind of abuse when you're with an addict. It's all there. The whole thing is there. Because if they get free, it'll be amazing. No. Guess what? They have addictive patterns. Even if they're free from the actual addiction. Anyways, that's a whole other episode in of itself. But we have such a God complex inside of ourselves that we think we're the saviors of people.
Yep. So it then lends into false responsibilities that we carry. We don't know what, in this dynamic of toxic relationships, it gets confusing as to what's my burden and what's theirs to carry. Because Paul said in the Bible, bear one another's burdens, but then the scripture's left out where he says each one is called to carry his own load.
Right.
Right? So we just focus in on the bear one another's burdens. So we give into that.
Ultimate in codependency. Ultimate, right.
Right. And we don't understand what true love looks like. I think that's another big reason.
Right.
We don't know what true love looks like because we weren't equipped in it. So then we're prone to carrying these burdens that we're not supposed to carry. So where I would find this over and over again is I first had the mindset of, if there's a problem, if I initiate a conversation, we could fix this. Because I feel like in my history, there has been a theme where out of my brokenness, there was a theme of where I became a fixer and talking people through things. And sometimes it would work. They'd be convinced. And it would feed that. And it's not all evil, where there was a broken side to it where I would, feel like, what's the conversation I need to have to fix this? And B, there's something I need to do better to make this relationship, improve. And really, it put the weight of responsibility. The other person's just kind of going on with their journey. Oftentimes, they're just going along. Right. They often don't want to change because they don't want the boat being rattled. Right.
And we think, I've done this with a family member. I just had a powerful conversation and they looked at me the whole time and I feel like it really sunk in. We're about to see change. And it's like,
yeah, this is real deal stuff. This is real. So I think that, let me just jump in here real quick, because I think that in any toxic relationship, you have to do some self-assessment.
Yeah.
And you may need someone to give you input to help you to understand, this is why I'm doing this. Because otherwise you'll be prone to that hook being pulled on in other relationships. You could leave it, walk away, set boundaries, whatever decision you need to make, right? But you'll still fall into those patterns. So we got to get to the root, and the root is first what's going on in you. Hopefully this makes sense. If the episodes that we're bringing out and podcasts are helping you, please let us know. And we want to let you know that we put out material on a regular basis. Want to let you know that these episodes are also supported by those of you who watch and listen. You can go to markdejesus.com and click on the donate button. One of the resources I would recommend is probably the book, God Loves Me and I Love Myself, because we need to clarify, what does it mean for you to have a better image in how you see yourself? And when you and I talk about the subject we're delving into, we always seem to find our way back to, you got to work on yourself. You got to work on how you see yourself, and you got to work on what it means to truly be loved, to love yourself, because your lack of worth and identity and lack of love is causing you to stumble into these same patterns all the time.
Right. And breaking those patterns can be excruciating, whether it's, I remember in getting out of that unhealthy relationship years ago, you and I have talked about this a lot. I would stand in the shower and almost feel like nails and glass were coming out. Like I was we get addicted to these people. Okay, whether you're in a relationship with an addict or just anything, we get addicted to these codependent relationships, these toxic relationships. We need to detox them, sometimes to even see clearly.
It's really good.
And whether that's like a physical, I had to go through physical pain of not picking up the phone. There's things that we have in play when we're in toxic relationships that need like sometimes a good microscope to look at and let yourself go through the pain of letting them go. And as you're doing that, it's a twofold thing of what does it look like, because we do not have reference. I think the one thing, if I could look back and say, what was I missing? I did not know at all in any way, shape, or form what love looked like. So a man looking me in the eye and telling me I was pretty or whatever, it was euphoric. And I instantly became like obsessed with the person and whatever relationship. And I'm speaking, romantic kind of relationships. We have this in friendships, with family members, what have you. Toxicity, there's a lot of stuff that falls under toxic relationships. But just in regards to that, I had to go, what does love look like? And really look into that, because my version of what love is was so messed up. It was so messed up. So as a result, I didn't know how to make my yes, my no. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do it just because you want to do it. What does Missy want? What do I want? Oh my gosh, no one ever asked me that. What do I want? I would morph friendships, whatever my friends liked. If they liked tennis, I started playing tennis. If my boyfriend liked motorcycles, well, guess what? I love motorcycles now. Like, I had no identity. So it's so important, especially the resource of the God Loves Me and I Love Myself book, because all of that needs to be reframed in our lives.
It's good. You said a lot here, and it's really, really good. I want to touch on them. The love gets confused. You don't know what love is. So we interpret love as lust. That's one option.
Right.
And that's the burst. We get the burst out of it. Now, here's the nuts and bolts that we often don't want to admit to. The relationship has chaos to it. Mm-hmm. It's got a good burst of a moment, then drop down into this drama. We become addicted to the unexpected turns, this drama that unfolds. This takes real self-awareness, because we're all prone to it. It's like we had a fight here, you don't know what's coming next, and it hits that dopamine place, that lust place. And we have to come to terms with realizing we both, when we came in, we were engaged, we realized, well, we got work to do on what love means. We were first married. It's like, wow, we got to really start over in many ways and relearn what love is. Love can be interpreted as lust, the burst, or whatever. Love can be interpreted as calling evil good, turn a blind eye to things, don't talk about certain subjects.
They didn't mean to throw me against a wall. They were just upset that day.
Right.
Well, it's what happens.
Right. Right. We do. Mm-hmm. We do a lot of that.
I don't mean to joke about that. I'm not trying to be facetious, but yet I was.
but how many people do that?
Correct.
Yeah. And
I even think about
happens in marriages, happens in dating relationships, friendships. It happens in church environments, work environments, where we call evil good, we switch them, right? Which that's what our world's doing right now. There's a switch of what's right and wrong, and there's confusion in the midst. And so we just kind of ignore it, and then nothing gets dealt with, and then we talk behind people's backs, or then we complain and pity to other people about how our lives are terrible. We don't make decisions because we've come under a counterfeit definition of love.
Yeah.
Because love is very relational, but love brings the light of God. It's not to condemn you, beat you up, but it does bring out a illumination to what's going on.
Right.
And I think that We fall for the lust route. We fall for the codependent route. We fall for the calling evil good, and then we're addicted, which is what you brought out. We are addicted like cocaine. And so when you withdraw or make a step of boundary, don't be surprised if you have withdrawal symptoms, massive ones, because you may have hated the dynamic, but you were addicted to it. You were deeply tied to that person. And now you're away from them physically, or maybe you set a boundary or whatever it is, but that stuff still has a hold on you.
Oh, yeah, especially when it comes to family.
Right.
Family, you can say, you know what, that's it. I need to stay away for a while. And that phone is calling you. I've done this. You just pick up the phone and just talk to them today. Be loving and just talk. You'll feel better. I've had that thought, like, you'll feel better, just talk to them. And then let's say the conversation goes well. There's no fighting. And it's a false sense of, you know what? We're good.
Right.
You're being too much.
Right. And you get lulled into this slow coma that slowly just numbs you out into it.
There's a lot of different tangents I think that we can take here. And Mark and I have our own personal, multitude of examples that we could probably bring out a bunch of different scenarios. But I think the thing that we want to focus on here is that we don't have good references, and there's an absolute huge area of understanding what love is, how you receive it, how you give it, how do you interact with what love really means for you, that we need redefined and we need reestablished in our life.
Otherwise, the counterfeits are going to come in. And a big one that will come in is guilt. It is my personal observation, most of Christianity sees guilt as A, coming from God.
Right.
B, they interpret it as like love. I feel bad. How many times do we say that?
So that must mean you love, right?
You know, I did this, so I feel bad. Okay, well, can we look at that for a second? We never take a moment and look at it. We just assume, because Satan presents himself as an angel of light and can use these guilt mechanisms. Most people who tell me, because I ask people who break free into new patterns, I say, what was the difference for you? They talk about, one, I got to work on myself. I had to have value and love for myself. Two, I had to detox guilt, because guilt was a driving factor in my relationships. Mm-hmm. It's family, right? You know, and I can understand. I please understand, I have sympathy and empathy for the struggles of this subject, and understand. And sometimes when you read the Bible, you read honor your father and mother, and it works against you. Oh, I've had to make space from my narcissistic father. I'm not honoring my father. Oh goodness, God is and we take these black and white statements and we don't take into context. You can still honor your father in your heart, but you may have to have a boundary where you can't be around him that much. You may need a break. See, this is the thing that we tell people you may need to make room for. You may need to have a time and space of a break. You may need to narrow it down to certain interactions. I'm not necessarily of the mindset of always, making a permanent break. I'll never speak to you ever again.
Right.
Right. I don't know that I would ever.
It could come to that. You could say, you know what?
It can, but I don't necessarily say that's the first decision. I think the first decision might be like and I know it's tricky because we're talking about a lot of different relationships, but like I can't be around you right now. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about family members, like your siblings or your parents or things like that. You and I both have had to take extended long breaks from certain family members in our life and in our journey. We've had to do that, right? And what's the purpose of it? One, to have the boundary and space to work on yourself. Now, things might get worse, and it may make you realize, wow, they're not capable. And I recognize there's some family members, they're so toxic and so dangerous and even abusive to be around that there's no reasoning, zero reasoning at all.
Right.
But I do like to advocate for you need to make your boundaries, but have a place in your heart where, okay, God, I give you room to work. I don't want to harden my heart as a result of this step away. But yet this is where I got to be right now. And there are certain relationships I've gone, well, I've got to make a boundary. I'm open for God to open up the door of reconciling, but I can't carry the weight of that. So like even in my pastoring work, there are people I just had to release them.
Correct.
Let them go.
Right.
In a couple situations, we had a turnaround.
Correct.
Where they said, all right, I'm willing to reason work. Sorry, let's work on it. Like, all right, cool. Let's work on it. Let's both work. God did some great things. Unfortunately, most of the time, they just go the trail they're going.
Yeah.
And that's, but I don't want to take that and now make it hardened over my heart. And now I carry that. So you know what I mean? So
right.
Did I explain that?
I think you
helpful?
did. No, I think you did.
Because people could take it in all the kinds of directions I don't mean.
And this conversation can be hard too, because there are a lot of nuanced things where you say, well, I have a really insane mother. We try to make room for her a couple times a year, whatever, that you can't just completely hard line cut off. But what are you doing in those times? And I think that's an important point to bring out. Are you hardening your heart? And what does it look like to give God room? It doesn't mean picking up the phone and hoping this next conversation. It is difficult to make boundaries. We are not saying that listen, you need to cut these people off and you need to. No, it is difficult. And there's excruciating, sometimes physical pain in not picking up the phone, in not engaging another. This will be the conversation that does it. It's painful to do that when you love somebody.
Yeah, one of the mistakes I bumped into, and I had to teach other people this, when you experience growth and healing, you automatically want to share that with like loved ones, and they don't give you the response that you wanted, and they're not flowing in that, and then it like just kicks up all that toxicity again, and you're churning in it. But yeah, there are strong decisions you have to make. There are situations in marriage and different avenues. Where I feel like I lost my train of thought for a second,
okay.
But where I feel like what we need to get back to is how can I work on myself, and not just, sometimes we make the decision of, hey, I need space from this. You may say, you know what, I can only go to a family gathering with this person once a year, once a month, or this is my rhythm. You may need to do that. Now I remember what I was going to say. The two most difficult ones are the addicts and the narcissists. Those are the two difficult ones. Now, addict comes in various forms. It's not just drug addiction. It's alcoholism. It could be sex addiction, pornography. It could be a whole number of things. Any addict kind of tendencies, right? And then there's the narcissist who is very, very overt or covert. They're both monsters. It's monstrously abusive, right? Those are the ones that often take listen, if you can't reason, I just can't be around you. Those we find, those categories,
take hardline decisions.
You got to let go of you got to completely let go of you having to do anything to fix them. Because
what comes under, I understand we could go into a lot of deeper things about this, but what comes underneath when you're in a relationship with addictions or under narcissistic parents is you've been deeply damaged. And that takes time to undo. And it's sometimes really, really, most of the time, difficult to stay in a full-time relationship with these people and heal yourself.
Right.
Because there's major patterns that you've developed in dealing, in coping, in being in relationship with these people. There's major damage that needs to be undone.
Can I bring out something that you brought up when we were talking about this the other day that I think is legitimate to bring out, is a driving force of why people stay? They don't see great options out there.
Yeah.
And some of that is like, there's a lot of toxicity out there.
Right. When we were talking about it, you're like, well, why is there, and that was my first thing. I'm like, well, who else is there? And I don't want to end this episode on a wah-wah, but that's unfortunately, and those of you that have written us comments about this, you've emailed us, you're like, all right, I'm in it. I hear what you're saying. I love your language. I want this. Where are the other people to run with? I don't really know. I have to be honest. Like, consider yourself lucky that you're awake. Number one.
Yep.
Okay? Because I believe that's part of what the remnant is talked about in end times, and those that are awake. I'm talking awake to truth, to being in the light. Because when you're in the light and you know Christ's love, even stuff that you're struggling with, it feels good because you go, oh, I'm loved. I can deal with this. Like, we could go on and on about that.
Right.
But it's difficult because you look around and you go, who is there? And we're not going to sugarcoat the fact that it's few and far between to find those people to run with. It just is.
The Bible talks a lot about being asleep, being dead in your understanding. There's a lot of language of awaken, wake up. It's time to wake up, wake to righteousness, awake you sleeping giant, awaken and rise up and shine, right? There's that whole aspect of awakening that's needed. So sometimes people have to make this decision. I would rather be healthier, do what's right for my journey, and at times be maybe alone, than be surrounded by people toxic and live a slow death.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the place you have to come to. I think a real driving factor is many people don't want to, they have a fear of being alone. And I don't know that God is going to, in every situation, you make the tough decision, and he's just going to immediately surround you with wonderful people. Now, if you leave toxicity, work on yourself, and enter in some new stages, it gives the most room for those relationships to show up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Great relationships are not going to show up while you're in the toxicity.
Hey, a silver lining. No.
Right. But they're not going to, I think many times people will say this to me. God bless you all who say this. I understand what you're saying. You say, I want a marriage like what you and Melissa have. Mm-hmm. I want that. What you're able to talk about things. You talk about all the things you've been through. And I say, well, number one, it was pretty hard work before we met, during the times we've met, being together up until this day. It's work. And we're both willing to do the work.
Right. That's the key.
And
you have to both want to.
Yeah. Both our journeys had a common theme. We made tough decisions.
Right.
To grow and deal with our stuff. Both of us. So if you do that and make the tough decisions and you invite God into that new territory, you're going to have a wilderness for a little bit. You just accept it. People go, I'm so lonely. I want to have more friends. Just accept it. Jesus isn't going to just solve that right now. Number one,
but clean air smells so much better.
Right.
Than toxic air.
Number one, just let him be that much more real in those lonely places. And take comfort in, you know what? I'd rather do what I sense is right. And just in the loneliness. We're like, as modern people, we're always avoiding that lonely feeling. We panic. I got to get busy.
Thank God for cell phones.
Yeah, we get on the cell phones, right? And it's
thank God.
So put the cell phone down and just feel the loneliness
the awkwardness.
For a minute. Not in pity, but just feel like, all right, I'm empty. God, this is revealing why I'm stuck in all these dramatic relationships. Or maybe you're in leadership in a church or something, and you feed off of everybody needing you and that codependent pull and all that stuff. And it's so easy. You need to detox from that and find the people that really want to grow and be more like Christ at times. You say, be like Jesus. You don't really want to be like Jesus at times.
He didn't give in to guilt. That's the one thing he did not give into.
And say, Jesus, I really, what's the key? Sell everything you have. Leave everyone. Leave all this stuff and come follow me, right? Of course, we need wisdom.
There was no yeah buts.
Of course, we need wisdom. We need all that. I get that. But I think that there is you know what? I'm just going to step out into new. And like I said, what the decision specifically is, whether it's a hard boundary, a really long-term boundary, if it's a conversation, those things, go to our last episode and go through those questions. What we're getting to today is you get honest about you. You get honest about what's going on in you and realize I may have to rebuild the foundation. I found a lot in my one-on-one work with people is their Christian grid that they bring in their conversation needs to be rebuilt. Like they come with OCD or come with anxiety or come with depression or their marriage is on the rocks or they've got financial struggles or this thing or depression. And the way they express who God is, where they are, is heavily, heavily contaminated with self-condemnation, God being mad at them, all this stuff that they're carrying that I go, okay, this is not going to be fixed by just one little thing, one little conversation. You need your Christian foundation rebuilt. That is typically what all our issues reveal. Like what it means to be in love, what it means to be in grace, what it means to have the truth, to experience the love of the Father through Christ. What does that really mean? What does God's voice actually sound like? Because most of what Christians say is God's voice is not his voice.
He's mean.
It's the accuser. It's like you said this a while ago in one of our episodes that cracked me up. You said the way people portray God's voice, it's like he's super passive aggressive and always
like
always
I love the
mood.
people that are like prophetic. They're good with this too. He looked at me and he said, "Why are you doing that? I didn't tell you to do that." I'm like, really? Is that how God talks? Is he passive aggressive? I don't know.
Right.
I mean,
what are you doing?
Right. I have family members that are, but I don't know that God talks like that. I didn't tell you to go there. Oh, okay.
Yeah. You just mentioned it. It's where our family grid is. It's really what we attribute to God.
Right.
There was one thought, the best way I can illustrate this, and this may mean nothing to some people, but years ago, you and I made the decision that we wanted to homeschool our kids for a lot of reasons. We could go on and on
episode
about
on that too.
We could. And one of the things that we learned, and we crack and laugh when other people jump into this, because we're like, okay, you're going to have to just go through it and you'll see. You kind of have we're going to do this, we're going to have this structure and this structure. And the advice we often got is you often have to like unschool yourself. Is that the right word?
Yes.
You have to like unschool. It's almost like you have to detox what you think
school should look
like, because we're trained in what we know. And so what you kind of have to do is like let the system crash, let yourself make the mistakes, and then rebuild what is best for each of your children,
right,
and how they're wired, where their strengths and weaknesses are, because Max and Abby learn in two totally different ways, and they were in a system that had one way of learning. This one way of learning, this one system,
for both of them, the same exact way, right?
And neither one of them actually fit into that paradigm.
Right.
They had ways, and we had to learn that and observe. And at first we were like, oh my goodness, we feel like, and then we learned you have to unschool. In this subject, it's the same thing. Who God is, what healthy relationships, stop trying to patch the scaffolding and just go, God, I don't know anything about love. I don't know what it means to live healthy. Just teach me from the ground up. I approach that with many subjects in my life. Even to this day, I just go, I don't know what I'm doing. God, and what it does is it gives you humility, teachability, and vulnerability to receive what you don't know, to learn what you haven't learned, and stop adding on to this structure. So I will talk with somebody and go, what do you think God's saying? You tell me I'm not reading my Bible enough. I'm like, oh, there is so much toxicity in that one statement. You think that's God? Yes. Well, there's not a whole lot I can do to help you if you think that's God, because then I'm gonna have to tell you that's not God, and you're gonna get all bent out of shape and all that. I say that everything that we do in our work in helping people is helping us to see that the issue at hand reveals a foundational structure. And I'm grateful for contractors that'll look at something and go, can't just fix this pipe. This whole system needs to have attention. It's not, I appreciate that. I appreciate that because in many ways, God's constantly going, we got to work on the foundation. And how we do relationships has foundational issues that need. The good news is, you joked with the silver lining. There is a silver lining. And in that, you can always work on yourself and what it means to be loved by God and to see your life. I've found when people truly learn what it means to be loved and they see themselves in who they are and that love capacity, that's the game changer.
Yeah.
Because now you make decisions based out of that. and you're not contaminated with the guilt, codependency, the fear, and all that stuff. It's like, who cares? I'm stepping forward in what is available and possible because of the love that God has for me.
Yeah, and I want to just encourage people as we wrap this up is it does feel awkward at first. And I like the analogy that you brought out about homeschooling. You are relearning how to do things. And with the homeschooling analogy, could we have just done a typical school day and gone with the norm of how things are normally done? Yes. But we would lose out on the value of how, because it's not easy sometimes to do stuff with your kids. That's how it's not easy to unwind and go, you know what, we made a decision to do this a deeper way, a better way, a healthier way in our eyes for our children. It's not easy, but when you then go through all those awkward twists and turns of trying to figure it out and you find your lane and motion, it is so rewarding. And that's really, using that analogy is back to what it looks like to come out of toxicity. Right. It feels painful at first, but when you start to reestablish that love relationship with God, what love looks like to yourself, all those things you go, oh, it's fresh air. This is so amazing.
Really
so
good.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Well said. Really well said, hon. Thank you so much. And we thank you for taking the time to listen to this or to watch it. It's available and anywhere podcasts are offered. It's also available on video. And if this episode's been a help to your life, would you consider becoming a monthly supporter or one-time donation to help support what God is doing in and through the message that we bring about? We mention this book a lot, God Loves Me, and I Love Myself. I do a lot of relationship work that surrounds the book Exposing the Rejection Mindset, which sits at the root system of most of our relationship, love, identity journeys. And speaking of journey, my latest book, The Heart Healing Journey, is a simple yet helpful way to walk the process of what does this journey look like to awaken, heal, and transform your life. So anyways, we pray this episode's been a blessing to your life. We look forward to seeing you in future episodes. God bless you.
Thank you, everyone.